It's the WWJ Industry Connected Podcast, a monthly podcast devoted to the groundwater industry produced by the National Groundwater Association. I'm your host, Mike Price, and today we're joined by Marie Maher, a professional geologist who is Assistant National Manager for Terracon's Western drilling operations. We cover the industry's most pressing concern, workforce development and safety for newer employees, along with other safety topics, as June is National Safety Month.
Welcome to the 5th episode of the WWJ Industry Connected Podcast, a podcast devoted to the groundwater industry each month. I'm Mike Price, Senior Editor of the National Groundwater Association's Water Well Journal Trade Magazine, and today I'm with Marie Maher, a professional geologist who is Assistant National Manager for Terracon and manages the drilling crews for the Western Group. She's a past volunteer on NGWA's Safety Subcommittee and has been interviewed for Water Well Journal safety articles in the past. Thanks for joining us today, Marie. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I appreciate your invite for sure.
Yeah, feel free to introduce yourself and your industry background for us to begin things.
Yeah, thanks. So I have a little bit of a history with environmental drilling, geotech drilling. Currently manage our geotech drilling operations in the western half of the U.S. So as a professional geologist, have a lot of experience in the field. Really enjoy logging and being out with our drillers and kind of outside on the projects, and manage a lot of our what we call Type 2 projects, dam and levee systems, some of the higher end clients, long-term jobs. And with that experience, I've been able to kind of work more into our safety program with Terracon, which has really been a valuable experience for me, to work close with safety professionals and kind of share that knowledge from the field, to help bring up information and do what we can to keep everybody safe.
Mm-hmm. You were mentioning off air your favorite part of the job. Can you share with us what your favorite part is?
Yeah, I really enjoy connecting with our drillers. The work that they do is so invaluable to building skyscrapers and commercial and residential properties, and the chance to get to talk to them about safety and our culture. Terracon has had quite a safety journey that really didn't start until 2012, and to be able to rehash that safety culture and what got us here, but also to explain the knowledge that what got us here can't get us there. So we really have to be adaptive and pivot on our feet and do things differently and think a different way with more of a growth mindset than a fixed notion of how we're doing things. So it's really leading with the heart and taking care of your people, more so than profits and metrics.
And you were saying that stories really connect the best with the crews.
Yeah, I think
statistics.
Yeah, I think as professionals and engineers, we tend to really like spreadsheets, and we really like charts, and we really like to see those graphs going up and down. But it's really the stories. You know, everybody has a personal safety story, safety journey that got them to where they are, and everybody can tell you an experience that they've had in the field. We have a lot of drillers that have brought on their kids to work with us, and that completely changes their perspective when they have a family member out in the field now. So everybody has kind of their own journey that they can share, and that really gets to the hearts of people to express how important safety is for everybody to go home. One of my favorite things to do when we introduce folks in a group is, don't just introduce your name and what you do, but who are you connected to? Who's your wife, your girlfriend, your kids, your family, your dog? Because when you don't come home, all of those people are affected. So when you're in a room, it's not just the people physically in that room. There's a whole network of people that end up affected if safety goes wrong.
Well, June is National Safety Month, and we're glad to have you on. We're going to talk safety here in a bit. But first, the groundwater industry's chief concern is workforce development. Your company is no stranger, is no different in trying to find the next generation of employees to enter this unique, hardworking, and fulfilling industry. Let's start with your general thoughts on the issue and how much of your job is involved with workforce development.
Yeah, I think in this industry, no matter where you fall in that category, you're affected by the workforce right now. So according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, we're really experiencing an increase in job growth, but a shrinking workforce. If you look back to 2020 during the pandemic, 13% was an increase in retirement. So we really had a lot of people leaving the workforce, which isn't helping, and we're growing jobs. So there's fewer folks to hire, and then even out of that category, there's fewer experienced folks to hire. So we've really had to get creative, just like everybody has. So some things that we've been doing is hiring on flexible schedules. The childcare issue is still around since the pandemic. So some folks we've been hiring on 4 days a week, even in the field with drilling, which is a bit newer of a notion. Typically, our field crews are expected to work 5-6 days a week. But if 4 days a week can work out with the market area and our budgets, then that's what we need to do. We're also doing things like paid transport. So a concern that we have is we have a lot of openings all across the country, but folks don't want to relocate because they don't want to leave their 2% mortgage for a 7% mortgage right now. So it's really stifling that ability to transfer and move folks around where we typically would. So staying put, but paying for your flights. So we'll actually fly folks out for 8 to 10 days and then fly them back. So we're getting creative with some of those things, which again, it is really dependent on the market we're in. It's a lot harder to do that in areas like North Dakota, but the Atlanta market, we have a little bit more flexibility with the clients and the costs. So those are some of the areas we've been focusing on. Me in particular, a lot of my work is recruiting. So we've been tapping into veteran networks, local trade schools, trying to recruit folks from the very beginning. If we can get them in and on to Terracon, we can train them the way we need them, and we can typically keep them a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
So
how's that go with the recruiting conversation? Like your elevator pitch to passerbys?
So I look for people that want a career, not a job. I'm not interested in someone who wants to join for a year. We will put you through CDL school. We will give you your 40-hour OSHA, your 10-hour MSHA. We provide you all of the training to really start foot with the right moves, to have longevity in this field. We also have a lot of progression in the company, which we're fortunate to. So we're not a drilling company, we're a company that does drilling. So a lot of our folks can come in, and as you advance in your career, if you're interested in environmental or geotech or facilities or materials testing, there's opportunities to move into different areas. So we really try to leverage that flexibility option that, you can come in and if you love this job, we're going to give you $1 million setup with equipment, and you can drill for the rest of your life, and that's great. That's what we need. But if your life changes, if your interests change, if you don't want to travel anymore, there's options in the company to stay with Terracon and really move around in those different segments.
Is the driller segment of your company the one in most need of workforce numbers?
I would say drilling and engineering. So we really struggle getting engineers to join it. And again, that's experienced in every company, I'm sure. But it's been a challenge to get qualified people. We always look for that, 10-year experienced person, and that's really hard to find. So the other interesting thing with the workforce is we're keeping our aging folks longer. So we're in the year 2030, we're projected to have 8% of our workforce that's going to be 65 years or older. So trying to adapt and be innovative to make sure those physical limitations when you're in that age group, we can still retain the knowledge without having to put pressure on the physical limitations is really interesting. So yeah, it's kind of it's going to be a struggle as we move into the future too. There's not going to be an easy button as far as workforce.
Yeah. That brings to mind real quick the transfer of knowledge of these older employees. Has Terracon looked into ways to capture that knowledge before it walks out the doors, or has thoughts in mind on how to capture it?
Yeah, it's definitely a struggle. The mentor and coaching, we call it in our company, has been imperative. So it is very difficult to bring in a driller with 10, 20 years experience. So growing organically is really our best bet. Where we've struggled is since the pandemic, anybody with a Class A CDL has become very valuable. So to combat that, we've minimized some of our rigs to only require Class B, just to take that threat away. So if we can get by with equipment that only requires a smaller license class, that's one way we can retain people. But also paying more, and a lot of people don't want to say that. A lot of folks want to say, what's the whole benefits package, and it's the loyalty to the company, and a lot of that is very valid. And at the end of the day, it does come down to a $2 an hour raise sometimes. So we have to be open to paying folks what they're worth and what the industry expects.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is interesting. The retention issues and combating the current culture is the next thing I wanted to talk with you about. How do you go about retaining once you get someone in the door and train them up right, retaining them, and how's that go?
Yeah, so we're a company of almost 7,000 employees, and you want to think that we have a good system and they're going to fall into a category and we're just going to move them up through their career. But it really comes down to personal choice. Everybody enters a company at a different stage in life. So connecting with your employees and understanding where they are in their stage of life and what motivates them. A lot of people aren't motivated by finance or stock ownership or employee ownership. A lot of folks are motivated by time with their families. So you really have to meet folks where they are in their current stage of life to figure out what they need to be happy. It's no longer a balance of work and life. Everything is integrated to this point. I know your phone probably goes off at 5 a.m, and it's a very that line isn't as clear as it used to be. So really understanding what everybody needs out of this partnership, because that's really what it is. Sometimes this might not be the right company for somebody, or they might not have that same interest or that same philosophy. We're a company on a very strong culture of safety and integrity, and sometimes that doesn't jive with a lot of folks. So it really has to be an understanding of what every single employee's intentions are and what motivates them to try to keep them. And we've struggled. We're no different than anybody else in the industry. We've had retention in our drilling group down to 40% at times. And when you take into account how much it costs to bring somebody in, to put them through CDL school, to put them through OSHA, it's a really big investment in the company. And then to have them leave in 6 months, it hurts. So we have to get creative, and we have to figure out from the onset when they come in the door what they really need out of this partnership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you bring up employee ownership and what that means for recruitment. Has that been a positive, an attractive carrot to project for new recruits?
It can be a hard conversation. A lot of folks, when they join, they haven't read the personal finance books, and they're, in your 20s, that might not be the thing that's in the forefront of your mind. So we match 60% on the first 7% into a 401, which is great. But then the longer you stay with Terracon, we also have the opportunity to buy individual stock shares, and we've returned 15 to 20% a year. So once you start understanding a little bit more about that investment and what that means for you and your family, that can be a huge carrot to stick around. It's very difficult when you only have 5,000 in stock. You might not see that 20% influx, but when you have 100,000 and you just made 20 grand for doing nothing, man, that's that kind of changed the ball game a little bit. So we can keep folks for 5-6 years, and you start to see those kinds of returns, and you start to understand what that really means. It gives the cause a much more stable ground. Because when you can rally everybody behind a common goal, that's really the point of it. It's not as individualized, because we all win. When the company does well, everyone does well. And from a drilling standpoint, that means newer machinery, newer equipment, more time really to mechanic and keep things the way they should be. And with that image then comes the bigger contracts, the better clients, the kind of that snowball effect of professionalism that we're looking for.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned a little bit about the projections on workforce age. Every blue collar industry is facing this as the baby boomer generation continues to retire. Are there any other thoughts on, it's just what you mentioned, the relocation, the option to fly employees out. That just speaks to the issue that we're facing right now. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been I've been in this industry almost 20 years, and I've never, if you would have asked me 10 years ago if that was an option, people would have laughed in your face. But that skill set is highly valued right now. Anybody that can do barge work or dam and levee drilling or work for the TVA on coal ash plants, I mean, those are some really high end capabilities that when you have struggles with retention, you're just not growing the next generation to be able to take on that workforce. So we have to move our higher end guys around quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is there any just lastly, I guess, on the training and workforce development and looking ahead, and trying to, I know it's kind of a Band-Aid effect right now. You're trying to stop the wound and try to get the workforce numbers going in your direction, but kind of looking out into the future and trying to see if there's ways to prevent this pipeline of lack of employees from getting to this point. Any thoughts there on how to proceed?
Yeah, I think the solution is not just add more people, because they're not there. So we have to start being innovative with the equipment, with the technology. We're really fortunate that we have a really strong geophysical group. So if the solution isn't add more people, maybe it's drill less holes. And if we can do geophysics in a lot of places instead of put machinery out there, we can reduce the need for that workforce as well. And when you look at innovations like CPT and other capabilities that can really change the game, it's a little bit physically less demanding. That's where we're going to gain some ground if we can eliminate the need for those folks. And then it also allows us to really focus on the folks that we do have, and now they become a really elite system, a really elite group of exploration professionals, while we're doing geophysics and some other in situ testing methods. So the innovation of technology is really going to be where our industry has to look, because the people just aren't going to be there. So we have to get creative, and we're going to have to figure out solutions to get the data and the information we need without having to increase the bodies that are out in the field.
Yeah, you're not the first one who's told me that, with technology being a huge component to the workforce development.
Easier said than done, I'm aware. but we have to start looking further ahead, because the year to year it's not gonna help. The equipment's getting harder to come by. The steel is getting more expensive. If we can innovate and get other solutions, we can better our safety ratings as well. So when you reduce the amount of workforce, we can reduce the amount of injuries. And again, the exploration professionals, they're not just drillers. They understand what's going on and why we're doing what we do, and that's really a unique perspective to have. It's no longer just putting holes in the ground. They understand why we use what we use, how we do what we do, and that theory behind it is more important than the mechanics of it.
Well, let's switch to regarding the newer employees entering the industry. Brings us to safety and making sure they know the safety concerns in the industry. And as mentioned, it is National Safety Month here in June. Let's start by looking at the high risk season and ways to combat fatigue as we're entering the beginning of summer. Let's start there.
Yeah, so we typically see a really large spike in injuries in May and September. So in May, everything's melting, days are getting longer, folks are in the field, contracts have been released. So we're just exposed more in the field. And then come September, everybody's trying to get their contracts done before winter, and and kind of the reversal of that. So we call this high risk season, but really it's year round. Anytime we do work, there's a risk to it. So one interesting thing about fatigue that we try to relay to all of our staff is that fatigue is cumulative. So you might have had one long day, and then you get a good night's sleep, but that might not be enough, because if you've had a couple long days, or you haven't been eating properly or hydrating properly, that'll catch up with you at some point. So the cumulative effect of fatigue, it's going to take more than one good night's sleep to catch up on. And everybody's lifestyle is different. So going back to leading with the heart and really understanding your employees and what motivates them, and where they are in life, understanding what their hobbies are outside of work is really important, because that all affects what goes on when they're at work. So trying to keep tabs on that and monitoring that can be it's a balance, right? You don't want to be too invasive. You don't want to be overbearing. But you do also need to know if somebody's a night owl, or they have a different lifestyle than what you might be used to. That really comes into play. We struggle this time because we also come out of winter. So a lot of our folks are wanting those hours, and they're wanting with the longer the days, they want to work longer. So you kind of have this cumulative effect of the employees want to work longer and our clients want us to work longer. So the folks that manage that have to be really delicate with regulating who goes where. So it's definitely been a challenge. But the other interesting thing is we're not in the same place with technology as we were 10 years ago. Everybody has cell phones now. So the risk that we run with folks being constantly stimulated on their phones, even when you're taking a 30-minute break, you're scrolling through Facebook or whatever else folks are doing now. So it's that constant stimulation can also add to fatigue, and you might not realize it.
Right. And then the weather, weather conditions, extreme heat, extreme rain, and thunderstorms, and tornado season, and hurricane season. Let's start with, or let's. How do you operate to reduce potential issues in this highly volatile weather season? I guess during the summer.
Yeah, so we've definitely had issues with hot machinery and dry grasses. We've had more than one site where we've may or may not have started fires. So we're not a stranger to those kinds of issues when it comes to the mechanics. We're a nationwide company, so we have over 160 offices nationwide. So we're fortunate that we can move folks around. And we always get the question, when is it too hot to work? Or when is it too wet to work? And those are really difficult questions to answer, because it really comes down to the personnel, right? Our folks up in North Dakota, they'll do mud rotary when it's 15 below, and they're perfectly comfortable doing that. Send a guy up from Florida, not so much. So it really comes down to personal comfort and what that risk is for everybody. So as we've gotten more nimble with moving our staff around and being able to relocate and kind of fill in those gaps, we've also had to be a lot more conscientious of the weather and how that affects folks, and with the driving. A lot of folks aren't used to driving in mountains or wet roads, or especially the snow. So it's very easy to resource share and try to move folks around where you think we have gaps, but that might not be the right move based on their experience or their comfort level. So the weather definitely plays a big component, especially in fatigue. If folks aren't used to the heat, or you're not used to the cold, that'll really take a toll on you. So you have to be conscious of who's going where and what elements they're going to be in. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the driller in the field. Whenever they decide things are unsafe or they're not comfortable, we stop work, period. It doesn't matter what the client is saying, doesn't matter what the engineer is saying. They are the safety lead on site, and they are the ones that make that call. And we've really had a strong empowerment in Terracon because of that at the end of the day, the folks doing the work are going to be the ones whose voices are heard.
Yeah, that was going to be a question, like the policy you have on with weather, how that goes about. So it's up to the driller on site to make that call.
Yeah. And it's not just with weather, it's any hazard that they see. If at any point anybody's uncomfortable on site, we stop work. But the driller is responsible for the safety on that site. They're responsible for the machinery, whether it's drilling in traffic or utility clearances. If at any point they think something doesn't feel right, we stop work. It's not worth taking that risk. And I know we did 20 years ago, and we've paid the price on that on a few sites. So it's it's definitely been a movement in culture to recognize that every voice does matter.
Yeah, you brought up voice in the culture. I saw recently on Terracon's social media platform mentioning the Speak Up. There's a Speak Up, I believe, a video on just the Terracon's approach to that. When you see something, speak up. Um, any advice for companies, who want to encourage that mindset on safety?
Yeah, everybody has blind spots. And when you're working in an industry where there's indoor and outdoor employees, everybody's going to see something different. So recognizing and appreciating and respecting what everybody's viewpoints are, you can really learn a lot. So if you're focused on, and we all do it, we're all narrow visioned at some point when we're trying to get through that report or get through projects or meet the client deadline. We might be missing an opportunity to learn from somebody else who sees it from a different perspective. So that ability to really embrace everybody at every level and learn from what they see is really where we move that needle when it comes to a safety culture. So I really appreciate Terracon, whether you're a 3-month employee or a 30+ year driller. You're going to be recognized and you're going to be appreciated for when you do stop work and speak up, because that's what's shifted us in the last 15 years to get to where we are. And we're not perfect by any means. We still have a lot that we need to work on. But just that acknowledgement that every voice does matter and everybody has the ability to speak up and teach each other what they see is really a cool thing to experience.
Preventative motor vehicle incidences, PMVIs. Let's tackle that. How do you reduce your exposure in that area?
If anybody has figured that out, I would love to know. so the great thing is we are growing just like most companies every year. The challenge is we're growing with newer employees with less experience. So the miles that we're driving are not going away. So what we've tried to do, it's really been incredible to figure out who does not have experience driving F-150s or any kind of truck. And sometimes we just assume people know how to drive a truck, and that's not the case. So we've actually reduced the size of our fleet, not in the number of assets, but in the physical component of the vehicles. So we're going to more hybrids and more cars and more Ford Escapes instead of just buying a fleet of trucks that we assume everybody knows how to drive. The challenge with a truck is some folks think it can go anywhere, and then we get in trouble. So by limiting that one thing, we have been able to move the needle a little bit, but it's the training that we've really tried to push through. So we have a really extensive onboarding process when it comes to driving. You're going to get behind the wheel training. You're going to get a coach. A lot of our trucks we have outfitted with cameras to watch a driver if there's any indication that they might be fatigued or falling asleep. We haven't, not our entire fleet has those, of course, but the one-on-one coaching and handling and that's really been an invaluable asset to us, and that's a big investment. That takes time, that takes non-chargeable work, but it's worth it to keep somebody safe if their job is going to have a lot of driving to it. We tend to have a lot less issues with our CDL folks because they have all of that training, they have all of that experience, they understand the hazards and just that risk when they're in the vehicles. But we have a bigger issue with our folks driving the smaller fleet that may or may not understand where those blind spots are and how long that stopping distance now takes. If you're used to driving a Kia and now you're in an F-250, it's a very different vehicle. So we really spend the time and go through just what those differences are and make sure people are comfortable. And we have some folks that never get comfortable, and that's perfectly fine. And going back to the speak up concept, understanding if somebody has the safe space to say, I'm not comfortable doing this, then we pivot and we can find an alternative. But having somebody have the capability to speak up and be vulnerable and say, I really don't know what I'm doing and I don't want to be doing this, that's where we're going to prevent a lot of hazards.
Mm-hmm. And you were quoted in an article I wrote back in June of 2022, and you mentioned how distracted driving was a pressing concern back then and how a renewed focus on defensive driving was needed. Where do things stand now with distracted driving and training your employees to be defensive drivers?
It is definitely still an issue. Again, everybody has a cell phone, and our policy is you won't use your cell phone when you're driving on company time. It has been proven time and time again that it's as dangerous as drunk driving. But what a lot of folks don't realize is listening to the radio or trying to eat while you're driving, all of those can be distracted driving. And it's not necessarily what you're doing in your vehicle, but it's everybody around you. We've had a lot of incidences where, we've been hit because somebody goes through a red light, or drunk drivers at 2 p.m. And it's not enough for you to watch out for yourself. You have to watch out for everybody around you. And that's really, that hasn't changed. It's getting worse. There's more people on the roads. There's more distractions. So we haven't cracked that code yet. And I'd be really curious, again, just to learn if anybody has made efforts in that. But I think, again, just putting that perspective and seeing that value, that it's more than just yourself. It's everything around you that you really need to be aware of, is really important.
Mm-hmm. I failed to ask too, regarding weather and safety. Are there, with technology in your hand with the smartphone, are there apps that you like to use that are go-tos for the crews in the field?
Yeah, so one thing that we've been doing in this last year, and our drillers asked if they could start this innovation with tablets. So as a CDL driver, you have to do a pre-trip inspection, then you have your e-logs, and all of that's typically on your phone. So what our drillers wanted was a tablet that included everything that they needed. So they can submit near misses, they can do their pre-trip inspections, they can get push notifications if they have rig inspections that are due. And they also have the weather bug, which is one of the primary ones that our folks use. So what they'll do when they get to a site, they'll go through their daily rig inspection list. They'll fill out their tailgate safety meeting form. Once everybody signs that, they'll pull up the weather bug. Then there's a magnet on the back of that tablet that goes right up on their rig. So that is a constant monitor for weather. If anything looks like it's coming in, a lot of folks also have Bluetooth speakers, so they'll play George Strait while they're drilling, which I always thought was fun. But that was awesome. Really that was an innovation from our drillers, and I give them a lot of credit that they, instead of having your cell phone and then your laptop and then maybe another device that you're pulling all this information from, let's have it all on one. But that way it's real-time monitoring, and then they can also pull up FaceTime and talk to us through Teams, so we can see what's going on in the field if they have service. So it's really been a good way to streamline and keep an eye on the weather, so they know what's coming and what they can prepare for.
That's really neat. When did that start? That practice of starting?
So we tried 12 tablets last year, and that went off with a great success. So now it's an option. So not everybody's comfortable with a tablet. Some folks still want the laptop and the phone. We still have some folks that have a flip phone. So, again, you have to meet everybody kind of where their comfort level is and where they are. But definitely the newer crews have really embraced that tablet idea. And it's been just easy for us having all of our systems on one thing. So it can push our tailgate safety meetings. It can push the field logs. If we have a geologist or engineer out there logging, they can log it on real time and then push that into the office. So it's been a lot easier with technology. And I think those are the things we have to really look at and look for. If we can save time in the field and just make lives easier, that's where you're going to see some hazard prevention instead of trying to fumble through and get everything done with paper. That's really been a success for us.
Yeah. But just lastly, on the safety tailgates, how long do they last, and how do you make those effective on the tablet and going through them?
Yep. So every day, whether you're on the same job or not, the crew is going to get together in the morning, and our tailgate safety includes environmental conditions. So you're going to put the weather, you're going to put expected weather, hydration breaks, things like that. There's also daily rig inspection items. So we're going to make sure everybody knows where the first aid kit is, where the fire extinguishers are. We're going to check all of the winch lines and the kill switches, things like that. And then we also have our life-saving absolutes on them. So Terracon operates by 8 rules that you're not going to drive with the mast up. Very simple simple things like that. But when you sign the bottom of that, you agree to operate to those standards. So whether you're a subcontractor working for us or our internal crews, everybody's held to the same standard. And then once they finish that, everybody signs, that gets pushed back to the office into the project file, and then you go to work. And it's been a really great way for folks in the office to be more connected. That way they see every day what the crews are seeing in the field. They don't have to wait for them to get back to kind of explain the unexpected, that, oh, there was a locked gate we didn't know about, or, there's a creek that we can't cross, or the client was out here for 2 hours asking some questions. So it's been a good way to document and kind of see where they are. And I think that connection from the field to the office, the more we can get those connections, the better off we'll be.
Well, great. Marie, I know you're busy like everyone in the industry, so your time is valuable, and really appreciate you taking some time to talk with us about safety and workforce development, and all the best in both of those areas going forward.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, Mike. You do a great job on these podcasts, so appreciate the effort you put in for sure.
Thanks for listening to the WWJ Industry Connected Podcast. We'll be back next month with a brand new episode, so be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. We're on all the major platforms, so it will be easy to find us. And visit wateroiljournal.com for the latest expert columns, feature articles, videos, and news covering the groundwater industry. So one more time, for Marie and I, thank you for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.